For the folks who are listening and not able to see you, can you, if you're comfortable, do you mind describing like, maybe weight, height, build, age, anything that you feel comfortable with sharing?
Yeah, sure, for sure. So I am currently 55. I'm about maybe like 5'7". I used to be 5'8". I think I've shrunk. That's what I'm telling my daughter. She now towers over me. But yeah, both my kids tower over me. But and weight wise, like I fluctuate anywhere from like 175 to like 180-ish. Um, Definitely bigger build athlete and strength biased, I would say. And I've never been a small human, so
That's
you
what I
know,
wanted to ask you. I
yeah.
wanted to know that. Like, have you always had this kind of build?
Yeah, I have. I mean, obviously, like honestly, before I started CrossFit, I had no muscle at all. Like no muscle in my upper body, like or at least not to like if you look at me like previous pictures versus after CrossFit, like my friends were like, "What the heck is with the spaghetti arms?" Like,
Really, there's a huge
yeah,
difference is what you're saying.
there's a huge difference. Yeah, there's a
Wow.
huge difference. So like my upper body's always kind of been smaller, but my arms definitely got a ton more muscular and primarily because I've lifted to very heavy weight. And for me, like my lower body's always been super strong because I just growing up I played soccer. Like I definitely gotten a lot more muscle since the time I started CrossFit
Which was
versus
when?
before.
How old were you and what year?
I started at the like end of 2011, beginning of 2012. So I was in my 40s. So it's been like I've been doing it for like almost 13 years.
That's impressive.
Yeah, so it's a long time. So I started in my 40s and I literally could not do like a pull up. I, could maybe bust out a couple push-ups, but like I had no upper body strength.
I'm curious, what brought you to CrossFit in your 40s?
It's funny because so I like my sport prior to CrossFit was equestrian sports. So I was competing in 3-day eventing before I had, my kids and everything. And then after I had my kids, I stopped competing in that, but I was still riding. So 3-day eventing is like, for someone who doesn't know what it is, it's like basically a triathlon, almost like a triathlon with horse and rider, right? So there's like 3 different parts to an event. There's the first part of it is show jumping dressage, right? Where you might have seen in the Olympics where they have like a top hat and coattails and it looks like
Oh,
the horse is
yes.
dancing. So that's one part of it. The second day is cross country where you're galloping like over logs, like through water, like, and you have to get through all the obstacles within a certain time period. And then the last day is show jumping. So in an arena, which is what people typically know, kind of when they think about horse equestrian events. So it's like a 3 event, 3-day thing where you go and it's whoever ends up the weekend with the least amount of penalty points wins. Right. So that's what I had been doing pretty much like since after college when I could afford it again throughout like my adulthood. I'd been pretty much riding horses and doing that sport.
It sounds like a Spartan race on a horse.
Kind of. It's pretty intense, but it's fun. I mean, and I think too if like you have any propensity for animals, right? Like and if you are a horse person, it's kind of hard to explain, but sometimes I like horses better than like humans.
You don't have to explain. I
Yeah.
know exactly
Yeah.
what you mean. I love horses.
Yeah. So, but it's a super fun sport. You become like a team with whatever horse you're riding, right? There's a lot of trust built there and camaraderie. And you kind of have to have that when you're going over these big obstacles because you have to trust the horse is going to go. They have to trust you that it's safe to go.
How fit
So
do
you
you
build
have
a
to be to
relationship.
do that?
Um, it depends what level, but pretty fit. I mean, I used to ride, and I used to catch ride a lot. So I would go and ride my horse in the lesson I was taking. A lot of times when people were out of town, I would ride their horses for them too. Sometimes I'd ride 3 or 4 horses in a day. So, and mostly it's like, it is some upper body, but it's mostly lower body. So like my whole posterior chain and my legs were super strong because our trainer would make us like, gallop around the ring with no stirrups, like jump with no stirrups, right? So you're building up a lot of lower body strength and you're rebalancing the horse with your seat and your legs, right? So you've got like 1,000-pound animal or more than that. and it's all through your legs, right?
Yeah. Would it make sense that somebody who's going to do better should be lighter in weight?
Not necessarily. Yeah, I think there's honestly for equestrian sports, there's all shapes and sizes,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that much. I did watch that in the Olympics because that was just fun.
hmm
That was fun. My mind is still trying to understand how you went from that to CrossFit.
So basically, after my kids were born, I stopped competing in that. And one of my girlfriends, actually, who I've known for a long time, she's a personal trainer. And after I had my daughter, like I wanted to start doing something else. And so I was training with her for a while. And then I decided from a budget perspective, I was going to try some boot camps. So I started doing that. And then I randomly bought one of these Groupon things for a CrossFit one, which I didn't know like what CrossFit was. I just assumed it was another boot camp.
Yeah.
And when I got into it, I mean, they were all, it was Jimmy and Allison and Dan. They had literally just opened their gym. And I remember going, and there was maybe like 3 of us that were going to the 6 a.m. class. It was very small. And they were so excited. Allison was so excited. She's like, do you know what CrossFit is? But literally I got hooked immediately because I was never a gym person per se, like just going to like a Globo gym because I really prefer to be outdoors. But I think what I liked about CrossFit is like there's so many aspects to it. It's never the same and you can work on so many things and it's constantly something that you can get better at. No matter how much better you get, it can always be harder,
Yes.
right? So there's always a challenge.
Yeah. What year did you become a badass and you started competing? Because I saw some videos of you competing and doing some incredible stuff, and I want to post it with this podcast for sure.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I started competing when I started, let's say like this 2013 was my first, I think 2013 was my first open workout. It was like 7 minutes of burpees.
Goodness.
It's
Okay.
my first, yeah. So I did that workout. And then I think because when I started at CrossFit Synapse, there was a woman there, Bonnie Lynn. I don't know if you've heard of her. So
I saw
she
her banner.
Yeah, so she was competitive actually in the Masters category at the time. So actually I think it was I can't remember if it was the first year that I did the Open or the second year where they had literally just expanded the Masters categories. So it was interesting. It was like basically I had just started and I can't remember, it was like maybe like 1 or 2 years in and I like placed in the top, I don't know, like a top percentage, like 3 or 5%, right? I think things were very different then too. People are so good right now as far as like the sport goes.
They keep getting better and better and better, so it becomes more and more competitive. It's also growing more interest, right? Because
Yeah,
back then it
absolutely.
was still pretty fresh. It was still pretty new.
Yeah, for sure. And I think especially like the masters categories, even like I think it was inspiring to me that Bonnie was doing the things that she was doing. She was a little bit older than I was. And so seeing her do those things was inspiring to me. Like, well, if she can do that, I should be able to try and do those things as well, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so like I think then like I moved over to another gym with another group of people that were there was a friend of mine who was at Synapse and she went to another gym and said, oh, it's very competitive over here. Like you can do teams and things because a lot of people are competing. So I went over to that gym and then started doing some team competitions,
Yeah, you were
right?
getting really serious about the competition.
Yeah, it was fun, honestly. And if you've ever done team competitions, they're just fun. Like, it's just fun to do them with other people.
It puts a lot of pressure on you. I haven't done them because you don't want to let your teammates down. And so you got to go really, really hard. And sometimes I think that means not listening to your body. I want to know what you think about that.
You do, but I think the beauty of the team, at least most of the competitions, the way it's structured is, you can kind of divvy up the work based on who's better at certain things than someone else. So you kind of play to each person's strengths and assign them like to the different parts. In some aspects you can, in some aspects you can't, and then you're doing the best you can with where you're at. And that's fine too, right? Because typically the teams I've been on, it's like everyone's very encouraging. We're just happy to be out there doing it.
You sound so balanced.
I think also too, like you meet such great people in CrossFit, right?
Yeah,
Like
you do.
everyone's there, everyone's happy to be there and getting, healthier and like moving their bodies. And I think most people that you meet in those communities are pretty positive.
I
Um,
love CrossFit communities. Honestly, it's my favorite fitness community. People are so welcoming. They love to suffer and they love having you suffer with them and they love talking about it
mhm.
and they love pushing themselves. There's a lot of things that I analyze psychologically with CrossFit because I think deep down inside, we like pain.
Mhm.
What do you think about that?
I think that I don't know if so much that we like pain, but I think we like to discover like where our boundaries are and
Yeah.
like and I think there's a lot of growth because I know when I first started, I definitely had a lot of limiting beliefs. Like people would show me stuff and I was like I took for a while CrossFit Synapse. Allison, who was working there, started an adult gymnastics class. And it was 3 times a week. And I never did any gymnastics as a kid. So a lot of the things that we were doing were super challenging things, right? So trying to learn how to handstand balance and like kind of like the progressions leading up to handstand walking and things like that. And even like a lot of gymnastics conditioning, flexibility, like things that I was like, there is no way my body will move that way, right? But over
Gymnastics is so
time,
hard.
it's so hard, but over time, like if you stick with it, it's amazing to look when you started and then how far you can get and how your body adapts and changes.
Yes. I feel like that's with anything, really.
It is. Yeah, I agree. It is. It's more about sticking with it, right? And I think a lot of times people give up before they've really given it long enough, right?
Absolutely. And it sounds like you stuck with it.
Yeah, because for me, it's like I get really hooked on like trying to chase a specific skill, right?
Mm.
And trying to get better at it. And I think like through the process, I've discovered that it may take me longer. Like it may take me longer to get the coordination or to get the flexibility than someone who's younger or who has a different background than I have coming into it. But it can happen, right? If you just keep working on it. So,
Yes, and I feel like you coming into CrossFit at the age that you did in your early 40s, you also come in with some advantages, you know? You come in with some wisdom, you come in with experience, you come in with some grit,
mm-hmm.
and you also know like it takes something in order to achieve something, you know? It's I don't know, from what you've shared, at least with your experience riding horses and then coming into CrossFit and seeing everything that you've achieved. I am going to want to talk about this last competition you did. That was so cool. The video footage was just amazing. In fact, I do want to talk about that like right now because what was that? Can you tell a little bit about what that event was, what that competition was?
Yeah, so basically, the most recent one I went to was a Masters competition. It's specifically for Masters athletes, so athletes over the age of 35,
Mhm.
and which is fantastic that it's all Masters because I feel like the people that run it really understand like the capabilities of the different age groups. And so what happened was because I had gone to the CrossFit Games earlier in the year, like I got an invitation to go to that competition. So it was just a great opportunity to compete against a large field of people in my age group and just see where I'm at with different skills we've been working on, right? Practice the skill of competing because it's very different from training, right?
Yeah, and can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah, because I think definitely you can train really hard, but I think when you come to competing, there's different things to think about, like really knowing what your strengths are, what are the things that you've been working on that are more challenging for you, and then when you look at a specific workout, how you need to strategize it to try and get the best performance that you can based on what you know about yourself,
Mm.
right? What are the areas where you can push? And then what are the areas you know you're going to maybe fall behind a little bit because you're not as strong or as good at those skills as someone else. So I think there's a lot of there's a lot of mental aspect to competing as well, right? Because of all the strategy involved. And then the other thing too is when you compete, like there's a whole different level of adrenaline involved. So in my experience, like I have been able to accomplish things in competition that I have not been able to accomplish in my training.
Really? Because you had the adrenaline coursing through your body and it
Yes,
gave you that extra jolt?
yes, yes, absolutely.
Did you
On
get
many,
high from that?
I don't know if you say high, but it's like you come out the other side and you're like, I can't believe I did that. Like, right? It's like for me to go and just do like 15 unbroken handstand push-ups, which is not an easy, like that's one of my, tougher movements that I've been working really hard on. And typically in training, I would do smaller sets, right?
Strict or kipping?
Kipping, but it's at the beginning of it was literally a 3-minute workout, right? The whole workout was 3 minutes. So it was 20 handstand push-ups, 15 hang snatches, and then a max calorie row in the remaining time.
Oh my
So you
God.
literally had to get to the rower as quickly as you could,
Yes.
right? So none of this like doing 5 handstand push-ups, coming off the wall, taking 30 seconds of rest, right? There's none of that. Like
You
you
had to
literally
get
just
them
have,
done.
yeah, you just had to get them done. So like I never would have done that typically, right? But I think it felt like I was doing them and I'm like, first I thought I'll break them up a little bit and then I'll take really short breaks. Like I'll kick down, kick back up. But as I was doing them, I'm like, oh, still feels okay. Oh, still feels okay. Right. And then, so I got 15 and then I came off and did 3 and 2. I was still one of the last people off the wall. Right. But I knew as soon as I got to the second part, because those are strengths for me, that I could push really hard. Um, so I still ended up out of 30, came in like 11th on that workout, even though I was last when in the first movement. Almost, there was like 3 of us that were last off the wall. Right.
Yeah.
So I made up the time or the score on the second 2 movements.
That's
But
amazing.
yeah, it's like those kinds of things. Or like there's a workout that had, it was like bar muscle ups and then lunges with a dumbbell. And I was like, bar muscle ups have been something that have been super inconsistent for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't sure, and they had a scale of if you can't do the bar muscle ups, it's like 3 burpee pull ups for every bar muscle up, right? Or something like that. So it would obviously
Okay.
take you a lot longer. So I was talking to my coach and he's like, go for the bar muscle ups. Let's just see what happens. Right. And I was able to get through like 4 rounds of them. Right.
Wow.
Which
How many sets? How many reps in each round?
there's only 3 reps in each round. Right. I
Okay.
did them all as just quick singles. Right. But typically it's not something that I would be confident going into. Right.
Did you chicken wing getting up there?
Oh, yeah. I did. I did, but I think that the first couple ones were probably not as good as the following ones because I think I just kind of got in a rhythm after that. And it's not ideal, and it's not something I'd want to do all the time, but I think, in those circumstances, it's really just get it done, right?
See, that's what I was kind of alluding to when I said that I had never done the competitions, in particular like teams and stuff. Anything where you're with,
Hmm.
I think competition in CrossFit, it's easy to sacrifice your form in order to get the reps and go faster. And I really want to know what you think of that because you're such a good coach too. I remember
Hmm.
you are all about good form, but
Hmm.
then competition is a whole different animal. And you feel like it's okay to compromise form when you're in competition?
I think that on one hand, like I know that I do so much bodybuilding for my shoulders, right? So because of all that bodybuilding work, I'm not concerned about doing that, you know, for like, it's maybe like not even 12 reps, right? So we're not talking about a ton of
You're
volume.
not concerned with possible injury.
I'm not concerned with injury because I have the strength in my rotator cuff based on all the bodybuilding work that I've done. So I think I wouldn't say the same of if I was purely just doing CrossFit classes, I would feel differently, right? Because I feel like
Yeah.
in CrossFit classes, the structure of the class is run, obviously you only have a certain amount of time, right? You have like an hour period. So by the time you warm up, you do a lift and then you're doing the workout, and hopefully you have enough time to warm up the movements well enough before the workout. But that's not the time when you're going to like learn a skill, get better at a skill, right? You really need to take time away from that to build the foundation and all the basics, right?
Yes, I agree.
So I think, I've been doing a ton of work to work on the coordination and reprogram my body to not do what it's doing, right? In the bar muscle up. But it takes a long time, I think, to change that neuromuscular memory for that type of movement once you start performing the movement. And the thing is, it's one of those things where you kind of have to do it a little bit messy before you figure out how to fix what you're doing, right? So you have to attempt
I
to
don't
do the
agree with
movement.
that.
I do because I think that whenever you try and do something new, it's not going to be perfect exactly the way it should be for some of these higher level skills, right? I think.
Well, let's take the bar muscle up for example, because
Mhm.
I think maybe we're saying the same thing, but for me, when I'm coaching a bar muscle up or when I'm learning how to do a bar muscle up, I'm not going to allow myself to progress until I master the first part. Like, first,
Mhm.
I got to make sure I have my pull ups down, my strict pull ups. Then I have to be able to go to the next progression. Maybe that's with straight arms. And then I'm like
Mhm.
driving my hips up towards the bar. And I don't
Mhm.
allow chicken winging. That's actually
Mhm.
how I got my first bar muscle up. But I want to know. And then from there, you add each step so that when you do get to the bar muscle up, it's so pretty, it feels good, it feels like you're flying. I want to
Mhm.
know, does that differ from how you approach it?
I think because of the trajectory of timeline that I'm on for some of these competitions, right? I'm not going to be at that beautiful, pretty version at the time that I'm competing, even though I'm working towards that.
We're talking about two different things because you're doing it for competition.
I am also doing it for, honestly, and for me, like the training is more important than the competition. The competition is great and it's fun and it's something that challenges me. But the day to day work and progress, like for me, it's more important to eventually get to that perfect, not perfect, but like that
Clean.
better form. Yeah, clean bar muscle up than, placing whatever in a competition. That's not like why I'm doing that. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense.
Yeah.
I think that's why I veer away from competitions. But what is it that attracts you to competitions? Because I feel like that's next level. Like, you already said that when you have the adrenaline coursing through your body, you have surprised yourself probably multiple times with what you've been able to achieve that you
Hmm.
have not been able to do in just regular training.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and even like, how they say like, oh, when people have this adrenaline, like you see these stories about like, oh, this person, their kid was trapped under a car and they lifted the car up, right? And their kid was
Yes.
able to get out. How the heck did
Yes.
that happen? Well, this adrenaline gives you like extra strength. You know what I mean? It is very true because I have felt it, right? Like where you're like surprised, how was I able to do this when I know how this feels in regular training, right? So like even move percentages of weight for like multiple reps, right? Or in complexes when you know that like in regular training that's not something that you would feel would be something that you would be easily able to do. But yet in competition
Yeah.
you're like it felt so easy, right?
Well, I can imagine when I watch people in competition, like seeing your videos and watching the Olympics and I love watching people compete because it's just mind blowing. I love watching, the CrossFit Games.
Hmm.
I volunteered at the CrossFit Games and seeing those athletes like at the ground level and just seeing
Hmm.
what they can do. It just you're in awe and you're inspired. And
Right.
after you want to just start working out. I wonder what what are some of the strategies that you use in training that you take over to competition, because you've got adrenaline, which is great.
Hmm.
You've been bodybuilding, you've got the shoulders strong, you've been working all of your movements. Do you have any breathing practices? Do you have any, like breath control or stress management? Or are there things that you tell yourself that, like, just in your head, like, because do you coach yourself?
Yes, I think like I try to set a goal for myself. Honestly, when I go and compete, for me, it's almost like I am trying to achieve my own goal, right? If that makes sense. Because I can't control what's happening around me. And I know I can go on the floor and I already know like these people are better. After knowing some of these people, it's like I already know they're better at certain movements than I am. They're more efficient at them, right? So for me, it's figuring out what the best strategy is for myself and then also knowing like what my capacity is for certain movements and being able to break them down. So regardless of what's going on around me, right, I have a plan, right? And
Yes.
I think part of it is just the fun of having the plan, but then in the middle of what you're doing, can I change my plan, right? And sometimes if you change your plan and maybe it doesn't work out, right? But sometimes you change your plan and like, wow, like that was great. Like, I'm glad I pushed beyond and wasn't as conservative or.
Just like with
So
your handstand push-ups.
yeah, I think it's just experimenting sometimes and those competitions put you in situations to do that, right? Where I feel like in training, I think, yes, there can be situations. I mean, I've been in class before where you're in a class and I did this early on, not so much later, but early on, you get caught up in like trying to, someone's, smack talking and you get caught up in trying to compete with them in class, right? Which is completely not sustainable, right? We all know this. You can't do that, right? But it happens to the best of
Right.
us, right? So there is a little bit of that in class sometimes, but yeah, I think the competitive environment allows for those types of moments, right? Where you can push beyond where you think you are. So,
Yeah, and it sounds like you have a plan and you have a very realistic plan. Like you're not unrealistic in your expectations. You acknowledge the talent that you are surrounded by,
hmm.
and regardless of what's going on with them, you're focused only on you and what you have planned for yourself,
Yeah,
which I think
absolutely.
is very smart.
And I think too, like sometimes when you're competing, I mean, I feel like there's always things that you're going to feel like I wish I was further along in improving on this particular skill or whatnot, right? But I think you also just have to know where you are and just give it a try, like see what you can do, right? Regardless, right? So I think it puts you in a very unique situation, I think, and to learn a lot about yourself, right?
You can learn a lot about yourself through that. Yeah. I'm wondering, when you're training for all of these competitions, because it sounds like you like them and it's not going to stop. You're going to keep competing. Am I wrong?
Yeah, and no, but honestly, I haven't done a ton of competitions. Like before I made it to the CrossFit Games this past year, I really hadn't done a competition since I want to say before COVID. So, for me, the training has really been like trying to acquire skills and just improve on skills and continue to work on things that are challenging for me, right? So improving my lifting technique, although I can lift a lot because I'm strong, like just continuing to work on my mobility, continuing to work on my, ankle mobility, my shoulder mobility, right? Making sure all those joints are healthy. So from that perspective, for lifting, even the gymnastics, like maintaining your core strength, your cardiovascular fitness, there's so many aspects, right, to it. And there's always things that you can get better at. Like even this year, like we had been doing running, but even after I went to the games, there was a running deadlift workout. And I knew for me, like the deadlifts are where I make up my time, right? But the running part, like everyone would come in for the run and then they'd break up their deadlifts and I'd go unbroken on the deadlifts and then go back out, right? So it all depends on like what
Yeah.
percentage of the workout is running versus lifting, right? Where it's going to
Yes.
net out. But even coming off that, like, you come off this competition, you're like, okay, well, we know this is a weakness. We knew that going in. So this is something we can identify as something we want to continue to work on, right? So since the games, like, I was running 3 times a week and my running fitness had gotten so much better. But I think it just helps you identify like, okay, here's the progress we've made on this or that. And like, here's how we want to adapt how we're training moving forward, right? Based on what we've seen and what we know. So it kind of like helps you rebalance like what your target and what your focus is a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are you training on your own? Are you training with friends? Are you training at a CrossFit gym or at home? What does it look like right now?
So right now, so it's kind of looked a lot of different ways, over the years, depending on like what I was trying to juggle between work and my kids' schedules. And my daughter has been running track the whole time. So, and then when she was younger, I was also coaching youth track. So there's always been a lot of things I've been juggling, right? So I think lately, because of my work schedule, so I'm training early in the morning. I have a gym that I set up in my garage over COVID. And pretty much after that, based on the jobs that I've had, it became super convenient that I did have it there because it allowed me to keep getting my training in, right? Because of the time constraints that I have. So like right now, I pretty much get up at 5:30 in the morning. I'll do a chunk of my training before work. And then if I have anything left to do later, I'll finish it after I get home from work. And then on the weekends, usually I go up to a gym that I work out at, which is nice because I'm part of that community. I get to see people and like just it's nice to be part of a community, right? I think that's what draws us all
Yes,
to this. So
100%.
yeah, so I think having that is nice. So that's kind of the balance right now. Like during the week I train at home and then on the weekends I go up to the gym.
How many days a week are you training total?
Right now 6 days a week, but one of the days is more like steady state active recovery.
Hmm.
So it's low heart rate, like slow, right? Slow work.
Yeah. And so you take one full rest day off, six
hmm
days, but one of them is more like steady state, lower heart rate, not pushing, just
Yeah,
moving really.
and even so, like my training is I'm not doing high intensity every day, right? So like there might be like I take Mondays off. Tuesdays are like a very heavy training day for me, so I have pretty much a little bit of everything. And then Wednesdays, a lot of times I'll have maybe some gymnastics skill work and then a lot of bodybuilding, but no conditioning piece, right? No, maybe some lighter percentage technique work for lifting. So it varies, right? It's like I'm not challenging, not having that high intensity stuff all the time, which is just not sustainable for me, right? To do that because I can't recover from it. So I think it's like and I'm working with a coach that's really been great as far as like focusing on the things that we need to focus on, but really ensuring we do a ton of bodybuilding at the right times of the year to ensure that everything's, all the joints are healthy, right? Which is a big part of like just what I've seen. And even looking back at coaching, the things that I probably tried to integrate when I was coaching was some things that maybe weren't really programmed, but more type of weighted mobility work, right? In the warm ups for the classes I was coaching, because I think some of those things people really need it, right? And it's hard even now when I'm not coaching and if I'm observing a class, it's like some people may be able to come in and like warm up for 5 minutes and snatch, but I know I can't, right? I
Me
need like
neither.
a good, yeah. So you really need like a good warm up, right? With your shoulders and weighted mobility to really open everything up in order to be able to get in a good position, right? For snatching. And if you don't have that kind of warm up, then maybe you need to adjust the movement of the snatch. Maybe you need to do it off blocks, right? Or not make it a squat snatch, right? Because you haven't been able to warm that up properly. So I think there's a lot of considerations there, right? I think I've,
Yeah,
I've
how
trained on
long
my
do
own
you
for,
need to warm up?
it depends. It depends what I'm doing, right? I know for sure there's certain movements where if I have to squat snatch, like I need a much long, I could warm up for like maybe half an hour.
That's how long I need.
Yeah. It depends on the movement, right? But for sure, if there's any type of overhead squat or squat snatch, I need to work on really getting my thoracic open and opening those shoulders up, right? And getting them warm, and then also being able to feel comfortable dropping dynamically into a squat, right? Overhead squat
Yes.
position. And there's been situations where, like, especially in my garage, it's been super cold, and my programming says, okay, squat snatches, building to, this weight, and do 5 sets of 2 or whatever, 5 sets of 3 at this weight. And if I don't feel like I can get warm enough to do it, I will power snatch it and then overhead squat it, right? Because it's not worth it to
Hmm.
me to risk like getting injured or something like that because my shoulders weren't warm enough yet, right? And I don't have the time to dedicate my whole training session to that because I have other things I want to get done during that session, right? So I'll adapt.
Yeah.
I'll adapt based on what I feel is appropriate. So
Let's talk about sciatica because there's a lot of folks dealing with that. And when did you get that? That's recent.
yeah, I would say probably I've been dealing with it for about a month now.
Oh, that's so recent. What do you think it's
Yeah.
from?
I think it's from the fact that I was running a lot. So I think because I was running 3 times a week and probably not doing enough like hip mobility work, right? To ensure that my body was not keeping that tension from running, right? So I think just mobility in general, like doing more mobility work because of the running, that wasn't happening. And so my body just tightened up,
Yeah.
right?
Have you been
Because
stretching your glutes a lot?
I have like a ton of pigeon work. I've also been doing, it's interesting because I have it on the left side, and when I've been doing glute bridges and things like that, I can feel that that side is not firing, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. So I feel like it's right now, it's kind of the piriformis is locked up and that side has kind of shut down as far as glute activation. So we're doing a lot of like single leg stuff to try and like get it firing again. And then also doing things to try and release the piriformis. And then also like I've also done a lot of like just hip flexor release, right? To try and see if because that's all connected. So and then getting chiropractic done, right? Like that helps because I was telling my chiropractor, like I feel like my hips are a little misaligned, right? Which is probably caused by everything being tight. So a lot of hip mobility work like every week, right? To try and get everything to start loosening up. And it
Do
has
you
it has gotten better.
That's what I wanted to know is because
Yeah.
when I've been desperate, I've gone to the chiropractor, but I have never seen great results except for when they took some time to get like some deep muscle,
Yeah.
work in there, and it was essentially like sports massage, but the actual adjustment where you hear the pop 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 pop, like that doesn't feel good for me personally, and I'm wondering, which part of the chiropractic experience feels good for you?
I think for me, I can tell I can tell very clearly a lot of times if my neck is out, like I can feel the vertebrae out in my cervical spine, right? Because I will feel the pain, but I also can feel it out of position. The chiropractic the chiropractor that I go to, he spends 30 minutes on body work before he adjusts you so that you can hold the adjustment, right? Because really what's pulling you out of alignment is muscle tightness, right? Or things like that. So I think the fact that he's doing that body work beforehand allows your body to reset where it needs to be, right? And I feel relief instantly, especially in my neck, typically. And typically my neck is the one because I am on a computer most of the day, right?
Wow, I didn't know that. I don't even know what you do for a living.
Yeah, so right now, so my previous job, I just started this job in the past year that I'm at now, but my previous job, I was doing tech consulting work. So I was working at a consulting firm and helping different clients implement software, so Salesforce software.
The reason why I was asking about what you do for a living currently is because I want to know what you're doing all day with your body. Are you
Yeah,
sedentary or are you moving? And what kind of levels of stress are you dealing with? Are they pretty, manageable? Are they more moderate or are they high?
I would say this particular job, they're manageable. Yeah. I would say the consulting job was pretty high stress. And I've pretty much had a standing desk for the past 15 years.
Well, how do you like that?
I love it. Like even actually when I went now to this new job, that was a little bit of a challenge because I was sitting a lot and I said, I can't do this. So they got me a stand that I can put like on the desk where I can put my iPad. So now I can stand and work, which is what I've been used to. So I can move around, it's just what my body's used to and it feels good. Right.
Yeah.
So that's been working great from that perspective. But I still have to make a concerted effort to get a lot of, I guess, what's called, size activity in. So like walking, like trying to get my 10,000 steps, right,
Yes.
a day. And so the days that I actually have my running programmed, that's easy, right? Because I'll go out early in the morning, get my run in, and those days I'm well over 10,000 steps usually.
How many miles do you run?
I'm usually like 3 to 4.
Nice. Nice. What kind of pace are we talking?
It varies. Some of them are like easy. It depends on the day, depending on what I'm doing. Some of them are like a tempo run. Some of them might be an interval. Some of them are like zone 2 runs. So it just depends on what's
Okay.
programmed for that day.
So lots
Yeah.
of different running,
Yep.
including intervals, which include sprints, right?
Yes. For specific periods of time, right? So there's sprinting and then recovery, sprinting and recovery. So
Yeah. Those are my favorite. Um, when it, you know what I don't know a lot about and that you can enlighten us with is how is training and eating and existing with this, because I can already tell that you are living a healthier lifestyle. You are much more mindful than the average person about what you put into your body, about how you train, about even like, I think that you are a very mentally strong person. How has this changed over the years, especially with like being in your 40s now in your mid 50s? How has that changed?
how's my training changed?
How has your training, nutrition, like, because as you age, your body changes.
Yeah, for sure. I would say like the biggest thing I've been focusing on is probably over the past maybe like 5 years. I mean, I've been working with a nutrition coach since 2018. So, what I noticed was that my body, I think it was like I was doing the open, I think it was in actually 2019 where I was doing the open and I could not regulate my body temperature. And I didn't really know at the time what was going on, but obviously I was like, perimenopause, like those early stages where my estrogen was starting to like decrease. So I was having those hormone fluctuations, right? At the time, I didn't know what was happening, but in retrospect, I know now that's what was happening. But definitely, I think protein is like the main macro that I'm like focused on right now, just
Yeah.
because, as you age, and I've been fortunate enough that because when I started CrossFit when I did, I was able to put on a significant amount of muscle mass. So really now my goal is to try and maintain as much of it as I can. right? And the other thing I think too, I mean, because especially as you age, as your estrogen drops, we become less anabolic, right? So it's harder for us to put on muscle, and it's harder for us to also like take the protein that we're taking in. It's harder for our bodies to actually process it and use it to make muscle. So
Absolutely.
because of that, we need to make sure we're consuming not just even sufficient, but almost like, you almost have to consume more than you think you have to because your body's not able to process it as efficiently to make muscle,
Are you
right?
also very mindful of the types of protein that you're consuming?
Yeah, I mean, I do eat animal protein, so I think I do mostly try to stay with leaner, right? I do eat a lot of chicken, but I think red meat's important too, just from an iron perspective. So we do eat red meat. I mean, pretty much everything is grass fed, right? So I'm very cognizant about like the quality of the things that I eat. We shop at the farmer's market every single weekend. So like just, I'm very cognizant about ensuring I know where things are coming from, right?
Yeah.
And trying to minimize like things that are like not found in nature that it's like if you can't identify the ingredients in something, like why are you putting that in your body? So,
I'm of the same mindset. Yes. And if I can't
yeah,
pronounce it or I don't know what it is and I
right.
have to look it up and I'm still confused, then yeah, I'm not eating it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, from that perspective, very focused on nutrition for sure. I think as I've gotten older, like you have to become even more compliant. And then just ensuring you're moving and ensuring you're lifting like heavy weight, right? And doing high intensity
Yes.
because we're less anabolic, the high intensity helps with that piece of it. And then also the heavier weights help with that piece of it, right? So that
Yeah.
that helps with your muscle mass, but then the other big piece of it too is your bone density, right? So with the drop in hormones and all that as well, your ability to maintain that bone density, right, decreases unless you're providing your body with a stimulus and a reason to, right,
Yes.
of those maintain your bone density. So I've been fortunate because I think when I did start, like I was ahead of the game, right? So now, like when I go to get a DEXA scan, my bone density is like off the charts, right?
I love
Um,
that.
which I think too partially was like because when I started in CrossFit, like I definitely was significantly lighter, right, than I am now. And part of I think mentally that was an adjustment for me to allow myself to accept that based on having this much more muscle and having my bone density be really strong is partially the reason why my body weight is what it is.
Yeah.
But when I look at my body composition is still good, right? But it's the mass. So it's like, okay, well, you could lose. And when I was working with I work with M2 Performance right now, but when I was working with a different nutrition company for a short while, they had put me on a very severe cut, and I lost like maybe 12 pounds, and pretty much all of it was muscle.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think you know, I think you can lose a weight, but ultimately that's not how you want to be losing it, right?
Yeah. And you don't want to
So,
lose muscle.
but I think if you do it fast and you do too severe of a cut, right,
Yeah,
that's what's going to happen.
I don't like anything where it's just like instant, it's severe, and I know that some people have that personality, but that's not the norm. I always tell people, do it gradually. Do it for long term. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. When was the last time you had your DEXA scan, and do you remember what your body fat percentage was when you got the results?
I want to say it was like 21% or 22%, somewhere around there, right?
Yeah.
21 or 22, which it's been lower. Like when I was younger in my 40s, it was at 17.
Hmm.
But the other thing is, as we get older too, our essential fat needs to be higher, right? So I think I'm still like in the top, like whatever, 98th percentile as far as like body composition, even though it's like 21, right? So I think, you know, could it go lower? Probably. Would I be healthy or feel good? Probably not. I mean, when I first started with this coach, one of the things we talked about, oh, I've been trying to cut some weight. So let's try it to see if it helps make your gymnastics a little bit easier, right? Because I had been lighter before I went through menopause. And so we ended up doing a cut. I got down probably close to my target weight, which was like maybe dropping like 7 or 8 pounds. And I felt horrible. Like
You felt
all my
horrible.
workouts, all my workouts felt horrible. Like I had no energy. It was just unsustainable, right? It was
Did you
unsustainable for
cut
me.
you cut calories in general, or did you cut carbohydrates specifically? What did you do to lose that?
It was over like a 3 month period that we did it. So it was overall calories and yes, carbohydrates too. So we were doing bodybuilding, a lot of bodybuilding, right? Because we tried to cut back some of the high intensity because it's just you can't really do the high intensity if you don't have the carbohydrates. So, but even so, I still did just not, I did not feel well. Like I had no energy, right?
Yeah.
So I think fueling to be able to do what I want to do is kind of, I've come to terms with like, okay, I may not be the leanest, right, that I possibly could ever be, but in order to try and do what I want to be doing, like I need to fuel my body, right?
Yeah.
So
You feel strong, you like how what you're able to accomplish. How do you like the way that you look?
I definitely feel like, honestly, like I feel very muscular and I wouldn't mind losing a little bit of that. But then I also know for health reasons, like it's smart for me to try and keep it, right? So not only that, because that's like where you store your energy, right? So I think from a metabolic health perspective, if I have more muscle, it's healthy for me to be that way, right?
I love hearing this because the women that I've spoken to who have gone through menopause or are in their 50s or 60s, they tell me, Kat, once you hit menopause, it is so much easier to put on body fat and it is so much easier to not gain muscle. It's like they tell me it's like this transformation, like
Hmm.
something just switches. And then, as you said, the bone density, it's something they actively have to work on. And from what I understand, I think her name is Stacy Sims, Dr. Stacy Sims. I'm a big fan of hers. She says that a lot of women are doing these hit workouts where they're getting their heart rate high, but not like at that threshold, at that like red
Hmm.
zone, zone 5. And so what they're really doing is they're just exhausting themselves without getting all of the beautiful results. And what they really need to do is they need to really push to that like maximum effort. That's why I like
Hmm.
sprinting so much.
Right.
And do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've followed Dr. Stacy Sims and I've read her books Roar and Next Level, she did Roar, right? Which is about like women are not small men, right? Like women's physiology is different.
Yes.
And then she did Next Level, which is specifically on menopause. So it's I understand what she's saying because I've experienced it, right? But yeah, and I think the issue too is like especially women and my generation, like it was the cardio bunnies, right? Like it was all about like trying to run as much as you can, or it was about cardiovascular. Like that's kind of the training that people leaned into more. So I think understanding that you can't continue to do that, right? And not expect your body composition to change because you're not giving your body what it needs, right? To maintain the leanness and the muscle, right? You're basically burning through your muscle if all you're going to do is cardio, right?
The unfortunate thing is there's still a lot of people still a lot of women in particular who still have that mindset.
Yeah. And I think I would say most women are way under eating protein, right?
Absolutely.
Way under eating protein. So
A lot of
that's,
women are under eating in general, or they're not eating, good stuff. They're not eating wholesome foods. They're eating a bunch of junk.
hmm Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of considerations there with nutrition. And honestly, it's like there's a lot of things that come into play with you when you talk about menopause too, because you could be eating healthy, but because of other things that are happening, like your sleep becomes super disrupted, right? Because of the hormonal changes, right? Those hormones also impact like, you know, your melatonin production, like serotonin, like all these things, right? So there's all these things that are impacted by those fluctuations in hormones. And I think that people don't realize that, but if you're not sleeping well, your body's not going to let you lose body fat, right? Like your body's going to
100%.
hang on to because you're stressed and your cortisol is probably high. So I think there's all these other things, like even if you are trying to eat well, but your sleep is garbage, that's going to prevent you from getting the body composition you want as well, right? So there's other factors. Maybe, like you said, like you have a sedentary job, you're eating well and you're working out for 30 minutes, but you're not lifting weights and you're not getting any other activity. Right. I mean, there's so many things that have to line up, right, to be able to maintain the body composition that most people want, but they don't realize how like you have to really adhere to all these things for everything to line up, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, it almost sounds like what I what I tell my clients all the time, which is it's a lifestyle change. It's like it's not you just take one piece of it and say like I'm going to work out and I'm going to keep drinking the alcohol. I'm going to keep like having my cheat meals, and whenever there's a holiday or somebody's got a birthday, then I can do whatever I want. It's like, do you know how many holidays there are? And do you know how many birthdays there are? It's like half of the year. So I don't want to hear that anymore. But it's like a serious commitment to lifestyle change is what I think people need. And folks, especially with women going through menopause, you know, I'm not going through it yet, but I'm getting close. It's like almost my time. And I want to be set up properly so that this transition can be more graceful than, you know, than it could be, because I'm assuming like if I start taking my care of myself now, lifting heavy, as you said, and eating wholesome foods and eating like an array of foods and not being
Mhm.
super restrictive, like that's going to set me up for a more graceful transition. Is there anything else that you can think of that you want to share with women who are like my age or younger, and help us to prepare for that?
You definitely need to be very conscious about how much protein you're eating, right? You need to be cognizant. I mean, I think it's a lot of the same things that we tell most people that want to be healthy, but you just need to be that much more stringent with ensuring that you're meeting these like goals, right? As far as like getting enough protein so you can maintain your muscle mass, making sure that you're lifting weights so that you can, and not just light weights, not like 5 pound dumbbells, right? You need to lift heavy weights so that you have some kind of stimulus that's going to make your body maintain the muscle, right?
Yeah, challenging weight, not light weights.
Yeah, exactly. I think those are super important. I think ensuring that you're getting enough sleep, right? Because again, those are going to affect your body composition as well, which we know is something that becomes a big issue as you go into menopause. Managing your stress as well, because I think we become less able to handle stress, right? Your body becomes more sensitive to stress, right? When you're in this life stage. So you can physically feel those stressors more intensely and they'll affect everything, right?
Is it true
So
that you'll become more emotional?
you can also have more anxiety, right? I think there's just a lot of different things that are happening because of the hormone changes, but there's so much that you can do to mitigate it, right? There's so much
What are
you
some
can
of
do.
your strategies with stress management in particular?
Honestly, for me, like one of the main reasons that I train and exercise is for my mental health,
Yeah,
right?
me too.
Yeah, because I basically, it allows you to focus on something and let go of anything else that's happening in your life. So you just have to be present in the moment. And so I think there's so much value in that, letting your nervous system decompress, right? Disconnect from anything that may be causing stress in your life. And it basically is like a reset button. And I think once you have had some physical activity, your body is able to better manage, right? Other
Absolutely.
other stressors in your life. So there's so many benefits to exercise. I mean, I think honestly that's in addition to nutrition, like those two things are like I would say like the top things that you should be focusing on, right?
Yeah.
As you kind of go through this life stage. Yeah.
You know how you were talking about like not these 5 pound weights, but like let's lift some legit weights, folks.
Hmm.
And number one, for anybody who's listening, you don't have to worry if, because I hear this all the time, women who don't want to get too bulky, women who don't want to get too muscular. And it's like, I say to them as politely as I can, you will never get there because you're never going to do the work that is required in order to look like that and to be able to lift like that. And
Yeah.
I don't want to hurt people's feelings, but that requires a shit ton of work and dedication. And so when I hear people say that, like, I don't want to get too bulky, I'm just like, I try so hard to just, understand.
Hmm.
And have you heard the same thing from other women? And how help me to help them by giving me some words of wisdom, like if what if they don't want to lift more than 5 pounds, or what if they're scared about putting on some more muscle? And I think it's mostly for aesthetics that they're
Hmm.
scared of it, but it's like if you don't have enough muscle when you fall, like good luck, good luck.
Yeah, I think especially as you get older too. I mean, the reason that most people, right, the reason that people that are older end up, in a nursing home is because they don't have the skeletal muscle. I mean, the muscle to support their skeleton, right? Like, so typically they say, okay, if someone falls and breaks a hip within a year, like that's it. Like they will not be around probably, right?
That could take them out.
Yeah, exactly. It'll take you out. So I think it's like just understanding like and reprioritizing. Like I understand as, aesthetics are very important to some people, but if you realize that actually if you actually do lift weights and put on some muscle, it will help your body composition. You will look leaner, right? I think people get scared because maybe they haven't lifted weights at all, right, during their lifetime, and they see people that are muscular. And I've had this when I was coaching. I've had people come in, and say, "Well, I want to get toned, but I don't want to get as muscular as you." I'm like,
That's what they
"Don't
all say.
worry,
I have
don't
people,
worry."
Claudia,
Yeah.
I have people saying that to me.
Oh no, that's crazy.
People say that to me. I don't want to get as
Hmm.
muscular as you, Kat. And I'm just
Right.
like, oh my God. But,
Yeah.
to each their own, to each their own. What do you say? What do you say to that student?
I literally tell them it's not going to happen. It will not happen because the amount of time and effort you would have to put in and you'd have to be lifting some very heavy weights consistently for a very long period of time to be able to build this much muscle. Not only that, you'd be having to align your nutrition to be able to support your body to build this much muscle. So it's
Absolutely.
not something that just happens on its own. You have
No.
to intentionally do specific things for it to happen, right?
Yeah. And that's
So
a part-time job, really.
yeah. Yeah. So if you're coming in for like a 1 hour class 3 times a week, don't worry. There's
Yeah.
nothing to worry about, right? The best thing that can happen is you get a little more tone, your body composition improves, you feel better, right? You have more energy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think people just don't know. Like,
They don't know, and I don't want to come off as judgmental here, because I will share that when I started CrossFit, I remember seeing some of the women at my gym because they were badasses, they were like competitor level, and I was like, "Oh God, I don't want to look like that." And because I was like these women who talked to me, but then when I stuck around and I started working out, I realized, holy shit, they work really, really hard. And I just started to like shift in my mind what I thought about the aesthetics that can come with working out that hard. Like I have mad, mad, mad respect for that. And I know I'm not going to do that because that's just a different level. And, but I feel like if you don't understand what it takes physically and mentally and nutrition wise and sleep and,
Hmm.
and stress management wise, then you'll never have the respect for how they got there. And so how do we how do we change women's minds about, wanting to be so skinny or not being light and lean? Like I have no problem with people being like light and lean, but when they're scared to put on muscle, it concerns me. And I'm just wondering, like, how do we help women to change that narrative in their mind so we can help them to be healthier ultimately?
Yeah, I think it's hard because of the way our culture is, right? But I think all we can do is try and set the example, right? Because, and I think, I mean, I know, like, even at the gym that I'm at now, there's women that are coming in there and they're just trying to get healthy, right? And they will come and ask me all types of questions. How do you think I should eat? And, all these things, like, I just want to, like, improve my body composition. But I think a lot of them, they just don't even know where to start. I think those women, I think they're older and they're in a similar life stage. So they understand how their body has changed. So now they're trying to figure out, what do I need to do so that, this doesn't continue down this road? As opposed to, I think, maybe women who are maybe younger may be more focused on ensuring that they fit a certain aesthetic, right?
Yes. That
Um,
is such a good point. I never thought of it that way because the women that I'm working with in general, they're younger. And you're exactly right. They're more about fitting into this mold, this aesthetic that I personally think is changing. I think that we are starting to embrace women who are a little bit more muscular and
mhm.
definitely fit and strong and powerful. Like we're heading in the right direction there. But as women get older and they're just trying to get healthy, what an interesting way to put it. Like they would probably just be happy with getting healthy.
Yeah, and I think too they realize, because the thing is, like, maybe they have been able to get away with not being as focused on their nutrition, right? And maybe they were able to get away with going on X number of runs, right? But now that they've gone through this life stage, that's not going to work anymore, right? And they're
Yes.
like, well, what I was doing before is not working. I'm doing the same thing. Like, I don't feel like I'm eating that poorly. Yes, I maybe have a glass of wine, or, I do these things, but I don't feel like I'm eating that poorly. I'm still doing like these cardio workouts, this many times a week, but yet I keep getting all this belly fat and I can't,
Hmm.
I, I don't understand like what's happening, right? But I think it goes deeper into the fact that your physiology is changing, right?
Yeah.
So the way that your body works is different, right?
And so that requires you making different choices
Absolutely.
in how you live. You don't get to just keep doing what worked before because your body has now physiologically changed.
Right. And it's not going to work. It's not going to work because it's just a different body.
Yeah, and do you notice like women before menopause, they can look a certain way and once they hit menopause, like their whole body changes and typically not for the better.
No, not for the better. Yeah, not for the better. And it's because of the fact that we're less anabolic, right? And it's because of the fact that most women aren't eating enough protein, right? And aren't lifting. A lot of them aren't lifting, right? Most, I would say, like, probably there's a greater percentage of women that were more on the side of endurance type of athletes than the other, right? So then they hit this period of life and they're like, what is going on, right?
Yeah. I
Because you
think you
can't.
hit three
Yeah.
big things right there. Lift heavy. Definitely do those. And another thing you said previously is make sure you do those hit workouts and
Hmm.
like go all out, go to that 100%, go to that max heart rate and get enough protein.
Hmm.
And it's not always possible, but you've got to start doing small steps to start prioritizing your sleep.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that there's another piece of this too, which when you start looking at, what are the things that happen as you get older too, like you're more likely to find out you've got different conditions, right? Like health conditions. And I think exercise specifically has been proven, right, to help with so many of those things as far as like ensuring you have better metabolic health, right? Because you're better able to regulate your blood sugar because your muscle helps to house that so it's not in your bloodstream. And then also from a perspective of just your brain health, right? They've done a lot of studies about that as well. Even taking people that were sedentary, putting them through exercise regimen for a certain period of time. These were people actually that had neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and things like that, and they improved exercise. So part of it is because of all the things that are happening right in your body when you do exercise. So there's just a ton of benefits. So it's not just exercise is not just about looking a certain way in aesthetics, right? Which is typically what people think, right?
Yeah, that's a good line. Exercise is not just about looking a certain way. It is so much more. It hits all these different things that are
Mm-hmm.
good for you on the inside and the outside.
Right. Yeah,
And
exactly.
for both of us, for our mental health, right? For
And,
our
uh, and uh,
sanity.
yeah, and I think it's like it actually helps you sleep better too, right?
It absolutely does. You work out
Yeah.
really hard, you're tired, you fall
Right.
asleep so much better.
Right.
For me, like it helps me to release tension too. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
am irritated or frustrated or whatever, and I get in a good like kickboxing session, like nobody can make me mad after that.
Yeah. But what do
Nobody.
you think, like with the folks that you work with and talk to, like how have you been able to explain to them, you know, that they do need to be doing these things, right? Because they're relying on you as their guide, right?
Yeah. You know what? You're the one who said it. You
Hmm.
have to live by example
Hmm.
because you can't tell those kind of people because it's really, really hard to get that into their head. What they see on the outside, what they get from society is getting them all day long,
Right.
constantly feeding them with what they should be looking like, who they should look like. And
Hmm.
so if I walk my talk and I eat right, I manage my sleep, I prioritize my sleep, I manage my stress, I work
Hmm.
out, I spend time with the people that I love and care about, I make sure to laugh a lot. I do all of these things and I look good about how I feel. That's how I get across to people.
Yeah, it's almost like they need to come to terms with it themselves and realize it themselves, right?
Boom. That's what it
Yeah.
is. I can't do that for them. And it's not going to be as profound if I just tell them that. And it
Yeah.
doesn't work. It also doesn't work. A lot of people just have to discover it for themselves.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And I think I mean, I know you've witnessed this too, but it's like when they do, it's such a cool thing to see, right?
It is. It's like,
You're on the right path.
yes, I knew you were going to get here.
Just took a little while.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of it is like it's their journey and you're lucky enough if you get to be, a small piece of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Is there anything else that you wanted to share just about like your own personal journey or any words of wisdom you want to give to people listening?
Uh, I just think like it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Because I think people try and set out on changing their lifestyle and they think they have to do all these things perfectly all the time, right? But it's really about doing the best you can every day. Like every day you may not be able to get your 10,000 steps in, but if you got 5,000 in, that's fine. You actually went out and moved, right? Like I think understanding it's not going to look perfect and every day it's going to vary day to day and some days will be better than others, but it's like if you keep like working towards those goals on a daily basis and just stick with it for the long term, knowing that it's going to be imperfect, you will make progress, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. What a great way to close this conversation with. Well, Claudia, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Kat. This has been fun.